You came to me in that hour of need, when I was so lost, so lonely. You came to me, took my breath away, showed me the right way, the way to lead. You filled my heart with love, showed me the light above. Now all I want is to be with you. You are my one true love, taught me to never judge. Now all I want is to be with you. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Mustafa ala habibika nabiyika Mustafa.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونستعينه ونتوكل عليه إنه خير ناصر ومعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه وأشرف أنبيائه ورسله أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه الخيرة المنتجبين. The topic of our discussion today is the necessary being argument for the God's existence. An argument that proves the necessity of God's existence. This is the continuation of the series of talks on philosophy of Islam from logical and rational point of view. On this topic, I need your full attention, brothers and sisters, because I've really been busy yesterday and today, the whole day, preparing this discussion. It is a very fine discussion, and we need your concentration on this subject, because this is the foundation of all talks and discussions that we are going to have. And Alhamdulillah, we have got here a lot of educated, knowledgeable brothers and sisters, which it makes very difficult for me also to speak. We have here brother Dr. Ali Duruskar, the great presenter of TV, my very close friend. We have doctors and professors from university. We have Dr. Sharbaf, one of the directors at the university and the faculties of the studies of the world, daughter of Shaheed Nawab Safavi is here with us, and a lot of other brothers and sisters that I really don't know the names. I welcome all of you brothers and sisters to this program. The discussion concerning the proof of existence of God. First of all, I have to talk about the development of this theory and the history of the argument, where it started and where we are at the moment. The first person who has actually formulated this very important argument is Abu Nasr Farabi. Abu Nasr Farabi is a photo on the left. As somebody who is a thinker, a philosopher, as a very great scientist, he has done a lot of research on Islam, have offered a lot of theories, a lot of discussions, especially in the field of kalam and philosophy. He is one of those mighty minds, one of really mighty thinkers. He is the one who has actually for the first time offered and formulated this theory and the argument. Ibn Sina or Avicenna has taken the idea from Abu Nasr Farabi, has added some particular addition to the formula and offered it in a better, presented in a better manner in his book Isharat. And then the issue went to Ghazali. Ghazali in the book Tahafutul Falasifa and the other books that he has mentioned about this theory. And then Ibn Rushd has taken this issue to his books. And then, very ironically, a Jewish scholar called Musa Ibn Maymun, which is his title, this person has actually translated Ibn Rushd's books into English, and that is the first time where the Western scholars and philosophers are coming to get familiar with the formula which was actually offered and formulated by Abu Nasr Farabi and developed by the two other scholars. A person like Thomas Aquinas is the first person who gets into the field of the business and read this theory and then starts talking about it. And for the first time, the West now knows about this theory, but unfortunately, the translation was not very good. Up to this moment that we are talking, still the West doesn't know about this theory. And that's one of the poor sides that we have. Unfortunately, we have Islamic revolution here, which has contributed greatly to the culture of the world, but these things hasn't been translated. So simple. A lot of good theories that we have. You know, we have a lot of conflicts at the moment between atheists and theist people around the world. A lot of people are fighting. The debates are going on all over the world, but the world doesn't know about the formula. And if they know very little about it and not the proper, true translation of the word and the theory and the argument. And inshallah, if we can manage after we finish this discussion for this studies to be translated and then offered to the Western countries, it will be a great contribution because, I mean, this is something that we need, really. You know, we have Pop debating with an atheist, and unfortunately, because doesn't have access to such informations, get defeated by so simple, you know, some physicians. And if we can manage to have these formulas and these arguments properly presented and translated, it will be a great contribution to the Western culture and the Western world. For me to be able to discuss about this issue, I have to, first of all, explain about some terms and some words. If we don't know the meanings of these words, we are not going to understand this issue very well. So I want you to pay attention to the words and the translation for us to have a proper understanding of those terminologies and the expressions and the words, and then we will tackle the formula and the argument. Beings, everything in this world, logically and rationally, by the thinkers and by the philosophers, not by lay person, not by uneducated people, but educated, logical philosophers of the world, thinkers of the world, people like Aristotle, like Plato, and then Socrates later on, the Muslim philosophers today, all philosophers of the world agrees on this point. Because it is all logical. There is nothing they not to agree with it. So it is something which every logical person will relate to it and agree with the subject. You remember we promised at the beginning that we are not going to offer Quran and Sunnah to prove our points. It's all pure logic, and we are going to apply our wisdom to find out if God exists or not. I'm not going to open Quran and say, brothers, sisters, here there is a book, revelation by God. It's written here that God is. That is not our business here. we are going to be completely talking to some atheist people who does not have any relationship with any religion or any religious authorities or reading any religious book. It's just pure logic that we are going to talk. Every being, everything in this world can not be out of these three words. The first one, it's either an impossible being. So simply the other one will be what? Possible being. And the third one is necessary being. You cannot, and it is not possible to add another force one day. Everything in this world is either one of these three. And we have to know exactly when we say impossible being, what that means. When we say possible being, what that means. And when we say necessary being, then what is the exact meaning of necessary being. If we don't know the translation, then we are going to fail proving our points. So pay attention properly. Impossible being. If you say 2 being an odd number, what will be your immediate reaction? I want that reaction to come loud. I claim and I say 2 is an odd number. I didn't hear. Is it possible or impossible? It's impossible. 2 being an odd number. It is what? Impossible. The next one, 2 being bigger than 3. Is it possible or impossible? Good. 2 being equal to number 1. Impossible. Parallel lines being a crossing line at the same time. Is that possible? Impossible. Square shape, square, being circle at the same time. Impossible. So a little bit of understanding of impossibilities are there. We all know what is impossible. Now, impossible beings cannot exist because it is so simple. It is impossible. It doesn't exist. It has not been existing before, and there will be no time in the future also that an impossible being is going to exist in the near future or in a far future. There will be no time that we can say, listen, technology is not advanced, so 2 is not equal to 1. One day technology is going to be improved, science is going to be improved, universities are going to research. Now scientists are working on this, that one day they should make 2 equal to 1. We are not going to expect that time. It hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. It's so simple. It is impossible. Now, a surprise. Even God cannot do impossible thing. God cannot make 1 bigger than 2. So simple. Okay? God cannot make 2 equal to 3. God is powerful, very powerful, but the power of God is limited to possibility. That thing should be possible, then God can do it. Yes, you will ask question, I'm sure, later on, that what about Jesus Christ giving life to dead? What about Musa alayhi salam going into the sea and putting the stick and then the sea is open? What about curing all of this disease and this and that and all of that? Everything which happened, it was possible. So simple. If something is impossible, it so simple cannot happen by me, by you, by God. It is impossible. So that is one. Although, the famous saying, nothing is impossible. The word itself says, I am possible. You know, you've just put a 2 apostrophe S there, it will become the impossible become I am possible. But don't believe it. Getting to know the words. So we have an understanding of impossibility. Possible being. 2 apple. Of course, it's possible. 2 computer. Possible. 2 glass. 2 audience. 3 whatever. It's all possible. It can be 3, it can be 4, it can be 1. It's all possible. Dinosaurs were existing. Possibly. You cannot say impossible. No, you cannot say so. Those dinosaurs were existing. And it is possible that again the same dinosaurs will come to exist if the reason is there. There was a time that there was no dinosaurs. In this land, there was a time that there was no dinosaurs. The reason were created, and then the dinosaurs were also existing. And then there was a time of a big explosion. One of the summits hit the planet, and then the generation of dinosaurs are gone. There will be a possibility that one day probably we are going to have the DNA of the same dinosaurs are resurrected, and then you can see again some dinosaurs are knocking behind your windows. Have you seen Jurassic Park? So, it is possible. You cannot say impossible. The cake is sweet. It's possible. It can be bitter. Have you heard about that word? It says, Betty bought butter, but the butter was bitter. So Betty bought better butter to make the better butter better butter. Betty bought butter, but the butter was bitter. So Betty bought better butter to make the better butter better butter. So cake is sweet. It's possible. But the same cake can be sour. It's also possible. So everything that you see around, everything which can be sensed by the 5 senses that you have, it is circulated in the circle of possibility. All possible beings. It needs a reason to exist. So simple, possible being is a being which for its existence or non-existence need a reason. If there is a reason, you will be sick. If there is no reason, you will be healthy. If there is a reason, you will be rich. If there is no reason, you are going to be what you call poor. If you work, it happens. If you don't work, it doesn't happen. These are all possible. The possibility is there. Then the second terminology, the third terminology, and that is necessary being. Necessary being. Sugar is sweet. Is it possible? No, it's not possible. It has to be. Necessarily, sugar has to be sweet. If the sugar is not sweet, it's not sweet anymore. That is the whole essence of sugar is to be sweet. Necessarily, it has to be sweet. 2 is an even number. Necessarily, not possibly, has to be even. 2 is bigger than 1, of course. 100%. No any doubt about it. Has to be. 2 is equal to 2. Necessarily. So anything that you can say necessarily after that, then it becomes a necessary being. Light is bright, necessarily. Everything is sweet because of sugar. And you can ask question, cake? Possibly. Apple? Possibly. Tea? Possibly. But when it comes to the sugar itself, you don't ask. Say, no. That is a point that I'm not going to ask. Sugar has to be sweet. Everything is bright because of light. But why light is bright? Because the essence of light is brightness. You can't ask that question there. You can ask about light everywhere. Why this room is bright? Why there is light here? Because there is. Why there is brightness? Why we can see each other? Because there is light. But the light itself is bright because it has to be bright. So it doesn't need reason for its existence. There is no reason for the sweetness of the sugar. Sugar has to be sweet, otherwise. So necessarily sweet is, sugar is sweet. Necessarily water is wet. Necessarily 2 is even number. Necessarily 2 is bigger than 1. Necessarily 2 parallel line is not going to cross each other. Necessarily. So, the other term that we have to get to know is cause and effect. Philosophy of cause and effect. And that is very important. Very, very important for us to get this understanding properly. Every cause can have an effect. Every effect has to have a cause. Every effect has to have a cause, but not necessarily every cause has got an effect. That is 1. 2, cause is always before the effect. My father is before me, and his father is before him, and if my grandfather is before my father. The son cannot be before his father. So it continues like that. That is a law accepted by every single thinker in this world, that always cause is first and effect comes the second. It moves forward, as I mentioned. An effect can be the cause for another effect, not for its own cause. A father can produce a child, can produce his son, but the son cannot be producer of his father. Although today, with this advancements of technology, is so mixed up that in family, the same person at the same time, which is the auntie, it is the mother, and the same time with his mother, it is grandfather. A lot of other confusion are coming, and it has come. But logically and rationally, that is the situation that we have. An effect can be the cause for another effect. I am an effect of my father, but at the same time that I am an effect for my father, which is my cause, I can be a cause for my son. And he also can continue like that. But he cannot be the cause for me. I cannot be the cause for my father. Small cause can have a big effect. Look at that picture there. If you look at that one, you can see the point there. It is microscopic, that port. that portion is completely a microscopic, very, very small particle, very small, that only he can see it. And even when you look at him, he is using a pants. He is using a, what you call, something to hold it. It's so small that he cannot hold it with his hand. So that small cause, he put, so the first domino starts and then goes, and a small particle, small issue, small subject can have the big effect of pushing that big object that we have here. So, cause and effect, it doesn't need reason. No, sorry, that part is not part of this. Look at this portion. Continue. Cause and effect. There is always a beginning. There is always a beginning. And then there is always an end. When we reach here, this is going to fall down there. So there is a circle. Philosophers in the West, they say, to prove this point, they say, everything which is countable, everything that you can count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even if it's billions, at the end of the day, it started and it has got end. If it's countable, so it has got quantity. So you can start spending 10 years, but you can count at the end of the day. Put 5, 10 big supercomputers, finally it counts. So don't say, no, these numbers of all of these rivers, the sands in the seashores, how you can count them. It is countable. It is possible to count them. Every single particles, every single cells of this world, if it is trillions of the cells in this world, still you can count them. And as soon as something is countable, it has got a start and it has got an end. That is also a part of philosophy of cause and effect. Every possible being needs a cause. If something is called possible being, has to have a cause. It is impossible to have a possible being with no cause. It is necessary by philosophers and thinkers of the world agrees that if something is called possible being, definitely, for sure, 100%, there was a cause for it. There is a reason for it. The chain of causes cannot go to the beginning. Look at this chart that we have there. This one can be the cause for the next one, but this cannot be the cause for number one. That is one. Secondly, this can continue like that, end somewhere. But then this one cannot be the cause for this one. You can reach there, but then this one also fall there. There is nothing here to push. So it can't be cause for something. You will get the effect from the predecessor's domino, and then you will also fall on something else. There is no cause, there is no effect, there is nothing. You end. Your life is done. The cycle is finished. So the circulation of the causative links is impossible. The continuation of the chain is also impossible. Has to have an end. Logic says, not me, it is philosophers of the world, agrees that always there is a beginning and always there is an end. And the end here cannot be the start for here again. So that's also to understand. These are all logical terms that we accept. The chain of causes, cannot continue indefinitely. As I said here, it has to reach somewhere. If it is billions of them, trillions of them, trillions dominoes, at the end of the day, it's trillions. It's 10 trillions, 100 trillions, fine. But there is an end for it. Have you been watching this competitions on the TV? I think last year I saw in Australia probably about 10-15 kilometers of dominoes. They were lined, and then the competition starts, and then, however, it continues, but it ends. The circulation of causative links is impossible. These are logical terms that we accept. Now, let us talk about the arguments itself. Now that we understood the meaning of impossible and the possible and the necessary being, and we understood fully the issue of cause and effect, and the philosophy of cause and effect is clear for us, we are going to start the argument. So please pay attention. There is so many billions of things around the world. Now, we don't know if these things are impossible beings, or it is possible being, or necessary, because it cannot be a force thing. It has to be one of the three. Now, we also learned that impossible being doesn't exist, because it was impossible. So if these things they are there and we can see them and they are existing, it means it was not what? Impossible. It was possible. So simply because they were possible, they exist. So number one is out. Impossible being doesn't exist. Impossible. None of these things which happen and we see and we sense them, we hear, we touch, we smell, every single thing is what? None of them can be impossible. It is either possible being, or it is necessary being, because the first one is completely out. So everything that you can see around the world is either possible being or necessary being. Logic says, logic is not Quran or Sunnah, it's not prophets, it's all brains of this world. Aristotle, Socrates, the recent philosophers before, Abu Nasr Farabi, Ghazali, Ibn Sina, all of them. Now, so things we can sense are either possible or necessary being. So here we have got mawjud, meaning the existence, or anything which is exist. So either they are going to be possible being or necessary being, which we call it wajibul wujud. Also, let me put you into the picture of the terminology. When we say, for example, sugar is necessarily sweet, that is what we say. But philosophers doesn't call sugar sugar. When they want to talk about sugar, they don't call it sugar. Philosophers, when they want to talk about sugar, they say wajibul halawa, something which its sweetness is necessary. That's the terminology of the philosophers when it comes to sugar. Wajibut tarawa, for the water. So philosophers, they don't care about what you as a physician or chemical person are going to put the name concerning this particular. They have got their own philosophical terms. So when it comes to God, they, instead of God, they don't call him God, they call him philosophical terminologies, that one of them is necessary being. They don't call it Allah, they don't call it God, they don't call it Jehovah, they don't call it this and that. It's all, they say, necessary being. So everything which is there is either possible or necessary. Now, we look between everything which exists here. If we find something with the characteristics of necessary being, by the way, that is going to be the topic of my next discussion. The next week we are going to talk about the characteristics of what? Necessary being. What are those specialities and characteristics which necessary being has to have? Otherwise you can't call it God. The powers, the unique, the being unique, being alone, being basit, all of those things, we are going to talk about it next week. So, if we find anything between all of those things which are over there with the characteristics of necessary being, then we already found God. And if we cannot find, you see, we checked here, we checked there, we didn't find this one. We only found again another possible one. Now here we found one possible. This possible also is like this one. Either it is possible or it is, yes, either possible or necessary being. So here we are going to continue our research. If not, then we will trace the chain of causes. We didn't find here also this one, so we go to this line. Here there is me, and then there's my father, and then the father of my father goes up to Hazrat Adam, for example. Okay? Your mother, the mother of your mother goes like that. So all of that. It's all going to continue for centuries, for ages, for millions of years. You go to the scientists and say, okay, life of a human being has been there for millions of years. Or we trace all back to the first cause. In fact, we are going to check the first domino. If there is 1,000,000 of them, or if it's 5 of them, no matter whatever it is, we will reach to the first domino. To the first domino. Here, if the first domino is a being which for its being need a cause, this one, we reach to this one. So we traced here, we are sitting here now, we go back to our father goes back to whole universe 10 million years before. So we reach there. If that one, the first domino, is something which needs a cause, then that is also a possible being. So here we reach to another possible being. And if it's not a possible being, if it is not, and if not a possible being, then the question, okay, I can't read it there. I have to use my eyes. And if not, then we question how it moved without existence of anything before it. We question. We reach there. When we reach there, so the question comes, if it is a possible being, so it needs something that has to push it, because it can not possibly automatically being pushed. You cannot say so, because we are logical people. Logical people will not buy that idea. Logical people will not submit to the idea that automatically one day we came out and then all of a sudden, we saw it's just moved. It cannot move automatically from within. If the movement was from within, then we have already reached to God. Because there was something which for its existence and for movement did not need any force from outside. There was something. So that is God. With the characteristics of that, we'll talk about it next week. But here we found something which was moved automatically from within. Then that's God. Because God is something which for its movement does not know reason, have reason from outside. It has to come from within. Like sweetness. Now, if there is no, then there is a possible being which we have to find out what was the cause of its movement. There is a movement there. You cannot ignore that there is a movement there. And that movement happened. If that movement didn't happen, then we didn't have no question. All dominoes were standing on line for billions of years because the first one didn't move. But the mere fact that all of these dominoes are sleeping and they fall, it means there was a movement there. You cannot say it was automatically. It was by something. So that by something either coming from within the first one, then that is God. That is something which we can call it. This one does not have no reason. It's coming from within. But if it is a possible being which need a cause, then we look for another hand there to find out who was that one. So logically, if we say it was automatically done, automatically this one moved, we have accepted that an impossible thing happened. Impossible thing doesn't happen. But if you say so, you have accepted against the logic of every single logical person of the world. You have gone against Plato, you have gone against Aristotle, you have gone against your own mind, your own brain, your own conscious, your own wisdom, your own logic, and say something impossible happened. While impossible thing doesn't happen, it cannot happen. So it was not something without reason and automatically. And then also we have accepted that infinite continuation of causes is possible. We have proved here before that it is, those dominoes that we showed you, it has to have an end. It has to have a beginning. You cannot say infinitely it goes and there is no beginning and there is no end. Logic doesn't accept. Logic doesn't accept. So you have to come to the conclusion that the movement, the first move happened by another being, which that being for its existence did not need any reason. The existence for that being is necessarily there. And that is the point, that no logical person has got any choice but to accept that there is a being behind the universe as a beginner, which that being did not have no reason for its existence. So they call it, philosophers call it prime mover. You call it God. They call it necessary being, wajibul wujud. You call it Lord. They call it cause of causes. You may call it Rahman or Rahim or anything, or Allah, or they call it prime cause. God exists logically. Salawat.
My ummah, he will say, Rasulullah on that day, even though we've strayed from him and his way. My brothers, my sisters in Islam, let's struggle, work and pray.